Hi, this is Sara from SaraRanAwayWithASpoon.com. Welcome to my kitchen, and I just wanted to give you a little background about me. I teach online baking classes for kids, mostly 10 to 15-year-olds. I teach them how to bake, so from that they gain confidence in the kitchen, and they're also learning how to have fun in their own home kitchens. So that's a little bit about me, and today I'm here live. I'm going to be making the biscuits for strawberry shortcakes. So I hope that you will watch this video and have fun making some strawberry shortcake biscuits. The reason for today's recipe is it's strawberry season here in the Northeast, and what better way than to showcase strawberries in a strawberry shortcake. But also, I love strawberries and my family loves them too. My son's birthday is coming up on Friday, and when he was, I think it was way back in 3rd grade, I made strawberry shortcakes for his birthday, for the birthday party. And I'm feeling a little nostalgic. He has graduated college and is currently here for the summer. So in honor of his birthday, I'm making some strawberry shortcake too. So I will get started with what I'm going to be doing for today. And today I'm just making the biscuit part. So the assembly, I'll talk you through it, but I won't be doing the full assembly and baking of the biscuits. So I started off before I started here, and I cut up strawberries. And my strawberries, as you can see, are really small. The reason for that is mostly just because I had to. My strawberries started to get moldy overnight. So I cut out all the pieces of mold and tried to salvage what I had left. If you want to cut your strawberries into quarters and use bigger pieces, go ahead, do that. And these strawberries have been sitting in some sugar. I think I used 2 tablespoons of sugar. I kind of just used the sugar based on how sweet the strawberries are, and these were very sweet, so I didn't need a lot of sugar. And what the sugar does is it helps release some of the juices. So you can see there's juice that's been released. So I'm just going to put these to the side. I don't need them for this recipe. Well, I need them for the recipe. I don't need them right now. So what I am going to do first is I'm going to measure out some of my ingredients. So I'm going to measure out flour, and I'm going to put it in a large bowl. A lot of times you'll see recipes that use a food processor. I'm going to keep it real simple and just use a bowl for this. So for the amount of flour that I need 2 3/4 cups of flour. And if you know me, you know what I like to do for flour is to scoop and measure. If you don't know me, let me explain what that means. Basically, I just spoon out the sugar. This is the part I call scoop. You might want to call it spoon. And then I take the back end of a knife and just level it off. So that's 1 cup, and I want 2 3/4 cups of flour in my bowl. 1, and 2. And then 3/4. To bake these up, you're going to want to bake these in an oven heated up to 400 degrees. So once you've measured your flour, if you have not turned on your oven, you can go ahead and turn on your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and let that preheat. We're going to be using a baking sheet with parchment paper, so you'll need that on the ready as well. Back to my measurements, I have a bowl, a large bowl, and it's filled with 2 3/4 cup of flour. To that, I'm going to be adding 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Make sure that you're using baking powder. It would be awfully bitter if you put in 4 teaspoons of baking soda. So 4 teaspoons of baking powder. My baking powder has a lid in it, and I just scrape the spoon and level it off. If you're measuring from something that doesn't, you do want to make sure it's level, so just use a knife and level that off. 2, 3, and 4. So 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. To review, in my bowl I have 2 3/4 cups of flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And to that I want to add 1/4 cup of sugar. So my sugar is over here. I keep my sugar and flour in large containers so that I'm not always fighting with the bag. It's much easier, plus these are airtight so it stays good forever. And we'll just level that off. 1/4 cup of sugar. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. In the bowl we have 2 3/4 cups of flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and my oven is preheating to 400 degrees. I'm going to use a whisk. This is a whisk, and I'm just going to stir this together. These are my dry ingredients, and they're going to come together nicely. There's not that much more to put in here. One more ingredient to measure out is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I like to measure salt over something that I've already used before. In case, this one I can dip into, but if you're pouring the salt, you don't want to have to pour it and have salt go everywhere. So I'm putting in 1/2 teaspoon of salt and one more whisk. Whisk that up. If you have to pour your salt, don't pour it right over your bowl. Pour it over something else so you don't end up with a ton of salt in your batter. Next thing up is butter, and I just took out my butter a few minutes before I started, but ideally you want to keep the butter really cold, and you can keep it in the refrigerator right until you're ready to cut it. So if you haven't grabbed your butter, go grab it now. We want nice cold butter. We need 1 1/2 sticks, 12 tablespoons or 3/4 cup, depending how you're measuring. And we're going to cut that into little small cubes, doing our best to not touch the butter. So you can see I'm just using my knife. When I touch the butter, my hand warms it up. And for recipe with dough, the colder the better. And if you find that your butter's been out for a few minutes and it's too soft, you can always stick it in the freezer for a couple minutes. And that will fill it up pretty quickly. So I'm cutting up small cubes of the butter. This is unsalted butter. And you may wonder why my butter looks a little differently than yours. This is Kerrygold butter, and it's labeled European butter, so it doesn't come in the same package or sticks that you're used to. So when I measure this, well, I know 1 stick is a cup, but there are tablespoons on it, which is why I also gave you the tablespoon measurement. If you haven't tried it, splurge. Go ahead and try some Kerrygold butter when you're making dough. When the butter matters. When you're making something like a biscuit, the butter's going to make it so light and delicious. 3/4 cup of butter is going into my bowl, and I'm going to get that in there. And there are 2 ways that you can do this next step. I'm going to move my board so it's a little quieter for you. You can use this tool. It's called a pastry blender, and you can push the butter and flour mixture together. The goal is for little crumbs to form and maybe like pea-sized butter pieces. You're not going to blend this all in. If everything is in a food processor, you put all your ingredients in a food processor, you can give this a quick pulse till the dough gets crumbly. We don't want to overwork it, just to the point of where we're going to be able to blend it together. And I just want to show you, I'll grab another knife. If you don't happen to have a pastry blender, another option is to use 2 knives and crosshatch. Let me show you what that looks like. So I take my 2 knives and I cut in a crosshatch. So 1 across and 1 down. And I'm just cutting where the butter is. This takes a little longer, but you can cut the butter this way as well. I'm going to keep using my pastry blender. These pieces right now, they're pretty big. I went them about pea size, so a little bit smaller. And I'm just pressing and giving a little twist. Basically, I'm being the machine. I'm the blade, and I'm pushing the dough around. I turn the bowl just so that I can get to all the different edges. It's getting there. Let's see if I can show it to you in just a second. Takes a little work. I always tell the kids to show me their muscles. If you were using a food processor, this would take about 3 pulses and you'd be done. You might have seen me just now, I wiped off the blade. Right now my butter's still cold and it's not smushing along the blade. But if you're finding that your butter's getting too warm, you can always stop for a minute and put everything in the refrigerator. So here's my dough with the crumbs, and the butter's a lot smaller than it was a minute ago. The next thing I'm going to add to this is a cup of buttermilk. And I've poured mine out already, so I have a cup of buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk or you forget to buy it at the store, you can go ahead and make your own. Just use a tablespoon of either lemon juice or white vinegar and pour it into your measuring cup, and then add to it the amount of milk that you need to fill it to 1 cup. Let it sit for about 10 minutes and it will curdle or sour your milk, so you can make quick homemade buttermilk if you don't have it on hand. Do let it sit for a little bit and be sure to stir it if you're using buttermilk at home that you've made. So I'll go ahead and pour in my buttermilk, and then I'm going to take a spatula and give that a stir. I'm going around the edges and down to the bottom, lifting and moving the dough so I can try and get that all around. And then I'm sort of patting the dough down and trying to get it ready to form a ball. It's looking a little sticky, so when you work with dough, it depends on how humid it is in your environment and what it's like with your flour, with your ingredients. So the rule of thumb is if it's a little sticky, you can always add a little bit of flour. If it's wet, you can always add a little bit of liquid. I mean dry, sorry. If it's dry, you add liquid. If it's wet, you add a little bit of flour. So I'm going to have my flour on already. And I'll put a little bit down on my working surface. This is what my dough looks like now. It is pretty sticky. We'll see what it looks like when it comes together. I'll use a spoon. You could always keep a little bit of flour in a small bowl and just use that for your work surface. So I put a little bit of flour and I'm spreading it around. I carefully washed this counter before I started, so it's a clean counter. And I'm going to make sure that my hands have a little bit of flour on them as well, because they could be wet or moist. And then I'm just going to pull this all together and squeeze it into a ball. We're going to be doing a couple rounds of folding, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So I'm using the palms of my hands and I'm pushing down, and I'm grabbing all the little dry pieces and working that in. Kids love to play with dough and to the point of too much, so just give it a few pushes. It doesn't need a whole lot of working. You'll get the feel of the dough. It really should just feel like it's coming together and not sticky and not too crumbly. All right, at this point, I'm going to grab my rolling pin and I'm going to try and get this big parcel of dough and roll it from the middle to the top and turn it middle to the top. I want it to be about 3/4 of an inch thick all around. And I'm checking to see if it's sticking. If it's sticking, I can throw a little flour on the bottom. I can throw a little on my rolling pin. The goal is to not add a whole lot of extra flour or it could get dry, so we do think about that. I'm almost where I want to be. So I roll from the halfway away from me. And as I can see, I don't know if you can see, there's lots of spots of butter that are getting nicely mixed in. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold one end in like a letter or an envelope, fold the other. Then I'm going to turn my whole piece of dough and do the whole process again. That's called folding. So we'll do it again. I'm going to roll this out to about 3/4 of an inch in thickness, rotating it too, just so that there's not one area that gets overworked. And if you've ever made anything like croissants or pie dough, certain types of dough, you will become very familiar with this process of folding. And it's a little sticky, but I'm not worried about it. Pretty manageable. So that was one fold. I'm going to fold it again. And that was 2 folds. And I want to do 3 all together. It is getting a little soft, so I'm trying to work quickly. and I fold it once more, and this will be the last time. And then from here, I'm going to cut it. So you could use biscuit cutters, you could use cookie cutters. Today I'm just going to use a knife to cut this. Oh, I'm going to need a little more flour. So I'm going to go through with this because I'm demonstrating that it is getting a little soft. I think ideally I might want to stick it in the fridge. We'll see if I can get it ready for you. Ultimately, I want to be at about 3/4 of an inch in thickness, and something that looks like a rectangle would be ideal. Oops. Good thing I don't need those anymore. The spatula and my knife are on the floor. I'm going to grab those in a second. So what I'm going to do, sorry for all the banging, is I'm going to cut these into strips. Some of these are not, this part up here is not straight, so I'm going to just cut those parts off. You certainly don't need to do that. You can do very rustic biscuits and you'll be fine. And let's see, one, these are going to be big. Some of these are huge, so let's cut these off. They're not so huge. So this one on the corner is rounded. It's not bothering me, but give it a little roll. See if I can make it a little more square. That'll be mine. The triangle shaped one. And then I'm going to just put these so that they're touching on my baking sheet. Nice and close. Some of these are a little thin. You'll get a hang of what you want to do with your dough and how much you want it to rise. I mean, how much it will rise. So this is one of those ones that sort of practice makes perfect. But it's all good. It's going to be covered in strawberries and whipped cream. So how can we go wrong? So I'm putting my biscuits on the platter so they're all, the baking sheets, they're all touching. Like I said, you could use a biscuit cutter, maybe a 2.5 or 3-inch round. And then if you're going to do that, just stamp them down. Don't twist them, just stamp them and put them on your sheets. Or go rustic and just cut with a knife like I've done. I have a lot of dough here. I wonder what will happen if I try and roll it. It's too sticky. That's what I thought, it's too sticky. So I'm not going to use this dough. You could refrigerate it and try it. I think at this point it's been overworked. The last step before I put these in the refrigerator is I'm going to take a little dish of buttermilk or milk, and I'm going to brush that on top so these turn nice and golden brown. And I just take a pastry brush and brush the tops of these. And already I can see that some of these have risen a little bit as they've sat. So these will go into my oven at 400 degrees, and they will cook for 10 to 15 minutes till they're golden brown. Let me just finish these off. I've put milk on top of all of my biscuit shapes. And these will go into the 400-degree oven for 10 to 15 minutes. Once these are cooked, you'll take them out of the oven and put them on a wire rack to cool. And when they have cooled, they'll have puffed up. And you'll want to take a knife and carefully cut across the middle of them. You'll put one on a plate, open side up, cover it with strawberries and whipped cream. Then you'll put one on top like a sandwich. And if you want more strawberries and whipped cream on top, that's good to go. You'll have strawberry shortcake at that point. For your whipped cream, it's really easy to make homemade whipped cream. If you want to, you would, just let me give you the measurements. I don't have them. You would mix your cream, I'll put it in the directions, with vanilla on low speed until it kind of comes together, and slowly add in a couple of, up to 2 tablespoons probably of sugar, but slowly pour it in as you're mixing. And you want to do that with an electric mixer. I like to use the hand mixer, and that way I can get to the bottom of the bowl and really feel it. And just keep mixing that together, and eventually you can pick it up to much higher speed once the milk has sort of gotten settled in there, and you'll whip it up until it looks like whipped cream and it's pretty soft in its peaks. So that's homemade whipped cream, really easy to do. And like I said, I'll put the amounts in my directions when I finish this out. So I have shown you how to make the biscuits for strawberry shortcake and told you how to assemble your shortcakes. And the next thing you need to do is make these and enjoy them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're looking for more information from me, you can visit my website at sararanawayWithASpoon.com. When you're there, be sure to download my free guide, Ready, Set, Bake, for tips on how to be successful in the kitchen. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.